Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Geyn, and today we're discussing a new class action lawsuit involving security guards who worked in Toronto's homeless shelter system and who now say they were not properly paid for that work. Hundreds of guards were hired through a private contractor to provide security at city shelters and at TTC properties. According to a new lawsuit, many of these workers now allege that they were denied overtime pay, not paid for all hours worked, and in some cases were not paid at all. The lawsuit now names not only that private contractor, but also the City of Toronto and the Toronto Transit Commission. The plaintiffs are seeking tens of millions of dollars in damages. And at the center of this case are some important legal questions, like when a municipality hires a private contractor, what responsibility does that government retain for ensuring workers are paid in accordance with employment standards laws? And can public bodies be held liable if a contractor fails to meet its legal obligations? Here today to help us unpack these legal issues are two of the lawyers representing the workers in that case, Ryan O'Connor and Gurpreet Farmaha. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Now let's begin with the allegations in the case. So you and the workers are alleging different types of conduct that I think could fit into two different categories. There's the unpaid wages that I referenced just now, but there's also the issue of working conditions. So Ryan, let's start with the unpaid wages. What do you say the security company did to these workers and the wages they were owed?
Well, good to be with you again, Christine. In my entire career, I've never seen such systemic and prolonged violations of employment standards as we've seen in this case. These workers are doing yeoman's work, keeping Toronto and its residents safe. They're patrolling drug injection clinics. They're patrolling encampments to make sure that there aren't spent needles around, that people are taken care of, and that security is maintained. Yet the contractor, and we're saying with the complicity of the City of Toronto, hasn't respected their work by not paying them at all, not paying them on time, not passing on a $4 an hour pandemic pay bump for frontline workers like these individuals. Um, there has been barely any overtime paid to any of these individuals for the last 5 years since this contractor got its first contract with the City of Toronto. Some of these workers have worked up to 100 hours a week. Over 50 of those hours would have to be paid at time and a half, and that money was just not being passed on to them. They were being paid straight wages. Cash employees, we understand, have been paid below minimum wage and in cash with public money. And now these workers were let go because the city terminated its agreement. They're all owed severance. As far as we understand as of today, February 13th, they have not been paid their severance. So the city is going to be on the hook for that. But the violations of employment standards are rampant, ongoing, going on for a half decade, and it's really appalling to see.
Now, Gurpreet, the work that these employees do is important and frankly dangerous. Cleaning up used needles and patrolling sites like this comes with inherent risks. And one of the allegations in the lawsuit is that the working conditions for these employees was not safe. What can you tell me about that?
Correct. So as you mentioned, as Ryan mentioned as well, these employees were often situated at city shelters, encampments, as well as various TTC stations, and they were provided the bare minimum of safety equipment. So what all they were provided were was a safety vest, a naloxone kit, and maybe a flashlight, and sometimes PPE. We've heard from various class members and CST workers that oftentimes they were required to reuse the same protective gloves shift after shift, despite picking up drug paraphernalia. And also, they were provided very minimal training on how to deal with violent situations or mental health situations that arise on shift. And they were expected to be there to de escalate when a violent situation arises. However, no training was provided. On top of that, these individuals were working long hours with very little access to breaks, often in very cold conditions, and they would be reprimanded for taking, say a 2-minute break to just warm up, and reprimanded for this. So these were long hours with very little protective equipment, very little times to take, very minimal breaks were allowed, as well as just inherently the job was dangerous. The residents that they were protecting and the individuals that they were ensuring were the security at often had mental health issues, often
Hmm.
had drug issues as well. So
Yeah.
inherently, this was a dangerous job.
I mean, I'm frankly shocked to hear these allegations about the lack of PPE because that seems like it would be just a fundamental part of the job. We've got to go to commercial break now, but we will be right back.